Some breaking news out of Auburn today. Athletic Director Jay Jacobs has announced that he will be stepping down on June 1st, 2018 or sooner if his successor is named. We asked AL.com's Kevin Scarbinsky and college football analyst Cole Cubelic for their thoughts on Jacobs' legacy. Here's what they had to say.
I'm obviously disappointed to hear that Jay Jacobs will be stepping down as athletic director at Auburn. He's a guy that I've known since I was a player at Auburn. That's how long Jay has worked in the athletic department, and I arrived on campus in 1996. He's done a lot for Auburn. He cares a lot about Auburn. I think he's done his best to be a great ambassador for Auburn. The reality is, similar to a head coach who has discipline issues with players, being the athletic director, the responsibility lies on you in that how your coaches and their assistant coaches, and to a certain extent the players on all your teams, act and carry themselves. And when there are discipline problems, when there are issues inside the athletic department, that's under Jay's umbrella. I think he understands the reality of that. I think he understands the responsibility in that. So I'm not surprised by the news. I understand it. I understand why Auburn probably feels like it's time to go a different direction. It's been a long run for Jay Jacobs. He's done some great things. The facilities are top notch. They're on par or ahead of everybody else in the conference. There's a gigantic multimedia deal that's in place. The apparel deal is a good one, and it's safe, and it's in place. I think there are some good coaches that are involved in the athletic department now, but there have been some potential misfires. And the issues that some of those coaches have had have probably led to this decision being one that Jay really had no choice in making. So I hate it for him because he's been great to me. And I'll say as a former football letterman, Jay Jacobs has gone out of his way to welcome back former players, make us feel comfortable in a place that we gave so much of our time, effort, energy, and really just love to be a part of the football program at Auburn. He's gone out of his way to make the Letterman's Club a big deal, to welcome former Lettermen back to campus, to get them involved with the current football team. And I'll always appreciate that about Jay, and I think he's done that with other sports as well. So I understand it. I get it. I know the business part of it. I think it's very easy for people to pile on. It's very easy for people to say, well, this guy went out and did something. This guy went out and did something, and just point the finger and say that's at the fault of Jay Jacobs. I understand it falls under his umbrella, but at no point in time do I think that with certain individual circumstances that have gone awry, is it necessarily fair to just point the finger at Jay and say, that's your fault that a guy was greedy and tried to lace his pockets with more cash, or that's your fault that a guy couldn't control himself around some of his players. I just don't think that's reality. If you pay attention to some of the wording in Jay's statement, he does go on and state that if a replacement is found before then, he'll gladly step down. And I think that he gives them ample time to do that. I think that most likely will happen. I don't see any reason that that wouldn't happen, given that Jay has presented that option. Now, I also think with Jay not stating that he is going to retire, it leaves open the possibility for him to work within the university or athletic department in another capacity. If he were to retire, then he can't go back based under Alabama law, I believe, and work for the university full time. So this sort of opens a door and leaves a door open for Jay to be able to go back and potentially find a job in Tigers Unlimited, some sort of fundraising, maybe for the university. In another aspect, advise the president, whatever one of those jobs might be. He now has the opportunity to do that. And I know how much Auburn means to Jay, and I know how much Jay loves Auburn. Jay has put the majority of his life into Auburn University. I mean, he's raised his children there. He has a home there. He has a family there. And he went to school there, and his entire professional life has been there. I just don't see Jay wanting to leave that. And if there is an option available to him to be able to stay on board, I think he would accept it.
Two words come to mind for me in terms of Jay Jacobs' legacy as the Auburn athletics director, and that's wildly inconsistent. Maybe the best example of that is he was the AD when they hired Gene Chizik as head football coach. Gene Chizik won a national championship in 2010, and 2 years later went 3-9 overall and 0-8 in the SEC and had to be fired. That's about as high a high can get as an athletic department in a football program, and as low a low. And that's really the story of Auburn athletics under Jay Jacobs. Wildly inconsistent. The basketball program hasn't been to the NCAA tournament since 2003. Now it's embroiled in a scandal that goes beyond the NCAA to the FBI and its national probe of college basketball. We don't know where that's going to end. We do know 2 players are ineligible. We don't know if we have a final resolution yet in the softball scandal. One of the most successful coaches that Jay Jacobs hired, Clint Myers, he had to be let go because of improprieties within his program. And it's one hire that looked good on the front end, but in the end blew up in Jay Jacobs' face. Now, if you can ask any number of Auburn people about their opinion of Jay Jacobs, and I've asked many through the years, particularly lately. And again, you get a mixed bag of responses. You will get some who will tell you that Jay is the ultimate Auburn guy. He was a former walk-on football player. He spent most of his adult life working for Auburn, and that he loved that place with the bottom of his heart. However, you will get other people who will tell you that during his tenure, and these are people who currently work in the athletic department, used to work in the athletic department, and they say that Jay Jacobs changed through the years, that he was no longer all about what was best for Auburn, that he became over time what was best about Jay Jacobs, what would make him look good rather than what would make Auburn look good. And maybe the most searing indictment I've heard of his tenure came from people who have worked inside the athletic department, that especially if you worked elsewhere and came to Auburn, you found a place that was almost stuck in the 1980s, almost run like a mom and pop operation that just happened to have annual revenues north of $100 million, that Auburn didn't change with the times, that they didn't modernize, and they didn't move into the new world that the SEC has become, as other programs have. And that responsibility lays largely at the feet of Jay Jacobs. So his is a complicated legacy. It's not all positive. It's not all negative, but it will be remembered in many different ways by many different people. But I think the one thing that the majority of Auburn people can agree on, it's past time for Jay Jacobs to step down and for that place to have new leadership.